All right, so we are kicking off our phase 1 final project. I am super excited. This is, I think, maybe my second favorite project after the capstone projects, just because it's a pretty fun topic. There's a lot of, it's pretty open-ended for you to, get creative and explore different things. So I think it's going to be a really awesome litmus test, especially for, figuring out what of the things that we've learned over the past 6 weeks is important. This is also where a lot of students figure out their style of approaching a data science problem. So very excited to see where we go. So today I'm going to go over a couple things. One, all of the project requirements. I'm also going to walk through setting up the project. So that will be towards the end of this recording. First, I want to point you all to this project guidelines document. So I make a guidelines document for every project. This document is actually also shared across all of my cohorts. So this one, not so much, but future documents, you'll see that I have a lot of questions that have already been collected from the past year of online cohorts that I've been working with. And so those will be a little bit more helpful. But as for now, just so you're not overwhelmed with stuff, this is the guidelines doc that we're going to be using today, as well as the project office hours that are what are going to be in place of our study groups over the next 2 weeks. So this guideline document is linked on the homeroom. Also, wanted to point out, I haven't really mentioned this yet, but I made a resources Google Drive for you all. Right now, it just has our guidelines doc, as well as a homeroom archive. So if anyone, let's say you skipped a couple topics, this is basically the stuff that I put in the homeroom to summarize what the more important parts of the curriculum are. So if you ever, missed a weekly summary, it's going to be here. I'm going to copy and paste everything here before I update. As we move through the programs, there's definitely going to be more and more resources put in here. And these are mainly the resources that I create. I have a lot of Google Docs, a lot of PDFs that I have, so they will slowly go in here. All right, so today we're going to go over our guidelines doc. I have put here a suggested timeline. Of course, this will make more sense in a little bit. This I'll go through in a little bit as well. This also has instructions for setting up the repository, which is what I'm going to do later on. I am pretty much going to be following this as well. So instructions are here just in case you prefer written versus watching a video. And then for each of the office hours, every office hour actually does have a topic of discussion. So instead of regular study groups for the next 2 weeks, there is going to be one study group where I'm covering topic 8. So on Tuesday, I'll be going over topic 8, which is the one that we have skipped. But Wednesday and the following week study groups each have a specific topic. And these are just resources for those. If anyone's just curious, these are just examples of project presentation. So if you ever wanted to get some inspiration for this project, feel free to check out past project presentations that I've linked here, as well as GitHub repositories of past projects as well. One disclaimer is that the project has slightly changed over the past, I think I have projects here from over 2 years ago. So the projects might not be exactly the same, but you can definitely get inspiration from any of these. Don't copy their code because I will know. All right, so before we get into all of this, let's just go over really briefly what this project is all about. So congratulations on finishing the first 10 topics of this course. Take a minute to celebrate. And this large end of phase project, it says about 20 to 30 hours to complete. I will say this is on the higher end for this project, and you'll see with the prompt, you can make it as easy or complicated as you want to. And I'll go into more detail what that means in a little bit as well. So this business problem, Microsoft sees big companies creating original video content and they want to get on the fun. So they have decided to create a new movie studio, but don't know anything about creating movies. And you are charged with exploring what types of films are currently doing best at the box office. And then you're supposed to translate these findings into actionable insights that head of Microsoft's new movie studio can use to help decide what type of films to create. So you have this business problem where basically, tell Microsoft what films you would suggest them to create. And you're supposed to come to these conclusions using data from here. There are a bunch of data that is provided, and I'll walk through how to, work with the provided data sets. I've also provided a couple sources of data over here if you would like to try your hand at using an API or web scraping for more data. You really do not have to. I would say less than half of students, less than a third of students actually end up using an API, just because the main focus is, pandas. I will say the trade-off is that the data that was provided is a little bit messy. And so you will have to use, your pandas data cleaning skills to clean that all up. These are your data sources. I'll show you all how to take the data files out and, make use of them. And then they even say here, if you don't know where to start with these 3 data files. And of course, I'll open those up in a little bit. In terms of deliverables, I will go over deliverables again during one of the later office hours as you have all your stuff done. You're going to have a GitHub repository with all of your project stuff. So within that, you need to also have your Jupyter notebook, which I'm going to walk you through how you create. And then also you're going to have a non-technical presentation. So I think the rest of this you can read through. In terms of project submission, I'll talk about details of that, towards the end of this project. Okay, so non-technical presentation means, yes, you all will have to be presenting your projects. If you take a look at the guideline sheet, it's also on the calendar. You will be presenting your project on June the 1st during our study group time. If you are unable to make it for that study group, that's okay. Instead of presenting in front of everybody, you'll just present to me at our review. So what is a review? Basically, for all Flatiron School projects, you would have to pass a project review with your instructor or another instructor, usually me. So basically, a project review is going to be in place of a weekly one-on-one. So the week that you have a project review, you usually don't have a one-on-one just because I don't have enough space on my calendar for all of that. But how the review works is anytime after this presentation date, for the next 2 weeks, you can schedule a project review. And what you will do during this project review is just, walk me through what you did, walk me through some of your code. I might ask some more guiding questions, and it's just to prove, your mastery of it. I will get into more detail about what that looks like probably in a couple of weeks as, you have more of your project done. So that will make more sense then. It's a 2-week review period because you have 2 weeks to pass the project. So what that means is, so let's say we present our projects on the 1st of June, and the 2-week review period means it's until the 11th of June. So let's say I schedule a project review for the 2nd of June, just to get it over with. If you schedule a project review for the 2nd of June, and I noticed that, maybe you didn't create a visualization that was meaningful enough, and I felt like maybe, I don't know, let's say you mislabeled all of your graphs. That would be unsatisfactory. So you're unable to pass the project at that time, but you do have until the 11th to make whatever changes are needed to get you to pass your project. So you can keep doing iterations of your project during this 2-week period until I say you pass. The downside is if you don't pass by the 11th, you will have to transfer to the next cohort and repeat phase 1. So that's important to note. Usually I recommend that students schedule your review sooner rather than later, just in case, well, 2 reasons. One, you can get it over with. If let's say you schedule your review in the 2nd and you pass, you don't have to worry about it anymore. But also if you do have to make changes, you will have the time to make changes. So definitely take note of that. Any questions regarding, passing the project and like the review? Because I know the dates might be a little confusing. Sweet. Okay. So that's in terms of schedule. I have this very, very brief suggested timeline of when you should be done with things. I would say data clean by next week. I think that's early next week, the 23rd. Most of this project, especially if you're using the given data, will be spent on data cleaning. Most of the analyses done by 26, and then other deliverables done and submitted. Okay. Any questions on anything I've mentioned so far? Because now I'm going to walk through setting up your GitHub for this project. And with that, I'll talk about how you open up the data files and how you can get started with your analysis. All right. At any point, if anything is unclear, I know I talk pretty fast, just interrupt me and let me know. Okay, so what we're going to go over right now is the GitHub repository setup. I have instructions here, so feel free to follow this. Right now, I'm actually going to go through these steps and set up one of my own. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to reshare my screen so that we can have these side by side. Let me make this a little bit neater, and let's share my entire desktop. Okay, so let's just put our guidelines over here so that we can refer to them as needed. And then here on the right side, I have GitHub, which is what we're going to create our repository with. Okay, if anything is not clear, if this is too small, please let me know. Okay, so on GitHub, this is just github.com. I have all of this stuff here because I follow several people on GitHub. What we're going to do is we're going to create a brand new repository. There are instructions somewhere that say that you can fork and clone the repository. I do think it is more beneficial to create your own repository just because it's all your own. You don't have like the history of, the project repository. A lot of reasons that not super important to know right now, but I do think it is very beneficial to create your own brand new repository from scratch. So you press this little plus button on the top right and click new repository. GitHub is a little bit on the slower side, so it's not your internet, it's definitely GitHub. Okay, so when you create a new repository, come up with a name. The name is not set in stone. You can definitely change your project name later on. I do recommend not calling your project something with like phase 1 or nothing with the word Flatiron in it. I do think for later on your resume, it'll just look better if you name your project something more indicative of what it is. So as an example, maybe I'm going to call mine Microsoft Movies or Movie Insights, just as an example. Feel free to use this name too. It doesn't matter. Things to note, your description, you're going to probably add a description later on, not important for now. Make sure it's public because you want it to be public so that I can grade your work. And then initialize with a Readme file and add a Git Ignore. Git Ignore, I had mentioned really quickly with APIs earlier. Basically, it ignores any of the junk files, and any junk files on your computer won't get pushed up to your repository. So you definitely want to add a Git Ignore. And the Git Ignore, there are templates to choose from. So we're going to just choose Python. And then just like that, we'll create our repository. Right now it looks very, very plain. Several things you'll see. This README is something that we're actually going to populate later on. I'm going to talk about READMEs in a study group next week. But at this point, before doing anything, I really recommend editing your README first. Editing your Git Ignore first. So here, as you can see in step 2, I say add this to your Git Ignore. These are just common files that you should be ignoring that aren't in the default Git Ignore template. So I do want you guys to add this. So how you do that is in your Git Ignore, sorry, the Zoom windows are in the way. Okay, so in your Git Ignore, you click the little pencil button to edit. And for a Git Ignore, what it does is any file that is listed here is going to ignore. If you see a star, it means like a wildcard. So all we have to do is just copy this stuff and paste it at the very bottom, and then commit changes just like that. Once that is done, we can clone our repository to our local machine and begin working. So how you do this, remember for your own project, you don't actually have to fork it. So just directly git clone like you normally do. So let me pull up my terminal I'm just going to do a really quick git clone. I know this is really small, but it's just a regular git clone. And I have my project there. Awesome. Right now it's completely empty. And what I'm going to do now is, before I get into that, if you're deciding to use an API, at this point, you'll create your config.py file locally. So actually, let me walk through that really quickly, just in case any of you want to do that. And let me zoom in here. Let's get into our Microsoft movie folder. So to create a config file, and again, a config file is if you're going to use an API that has like a key or a password and you don't want that to be visible on your notebook when you upload it. To create a file in the terminal, you don't have to do it through the terminal. You can literally create a new file within Jupyter if you want. But really quickly, the command to create a new file is touch config.py. And then when I do ls, you can see my config.py is there. And so if I want to edit my config.py, multiple ways to do this. A really quick way is to just open config.py. I think it'll open in like text editor or something like that, at least on a Mac. Oh, it opens up in Atom, which is my code editor. And you can like add your API keys here. If anyone's running into any issues with that, feel free to just let me know. I know this is not like one of the main parts of this project. Okay. So at this point, I want to talk about how you can get the data that was provided into your repo. Very, very simple. We're just going to clone down the project repository. So the phase 1 project is here. I clicked on this little GitHub icon and it brought me to this phase 1 project here. And the zip data, the data files that are provided are in this zip data folder. So you can see there's a bunch of CSV files here. So all we're going to do is we're going to just clone this down. Let's bring up my terminal. Let's see. I'm just going to make sure that I'm outside of my project repository. Very, very bad thing to clone a repo inside of a repo. So let's just make sure that's not happening. And we will git clone the project repo. It probably will take a while because all of the data files are there. So as that is downloading, as that is cloning, all we're going to do is we're just going to drag and drop the zip data files into our project repo. It seems very, very manual, but that is absolutely okay. So this is what it looks like in a Mac. So let's see, I have my phase 1 project here. I'm going to take the zip data. I'm going to copy it. And I'm just going to paste it into my Microsoft Movie Insights folder like that. And that is absolutely okay to do. Sweet. Now that that is there, I can cd into my Microsoft Movie Insights. When I do ls, I can see that my zip data is there. Amazing. So just one more thing to double check. I think they're in csvs.gzs. I'm going to check real quick if this can be opened. Okay. Because I forget if you have to unzip them first. Anyways, we'll find out. All right, so right now, let's just go into Jupyter. Let's launch a Jupyter notebook. Let's see which window it opens up on. All right, lots of things are running on my computer, so it's taking a little while. Okay. So here I have my Jupyter. I'm going to move it to this screen because it's a little bigger. All I'm going to do here is just create a brand new Jupyter notebook. Oops, I didn't need to do this. New Python 3 notebook. Awesome. Here you can do your name your notebook, maybe like, I don't know, Microsoft movie data cleaning. Maybe I just want to do my data cleaning first. And then let's import pandas as PD, just so we can check whether we can read our CSVs. So we're going to do pd.read CSV, and we want to do the CSV files. Now remember here, the files are inside of zipped data. So let's just do an example. Let's do this one for now. tn.moviebudgets.csv.gz. We're going to do zip data. Don't forget to do that. Slash this. Hopefully this works. Sweet. Okay, perfect. That works. Even with the .gz, this is able to be opened. You can do all your data cleaning here, and then you should be good to go. You can do the same process with however many of the data files you choose to work with. Again, you don't have to work with every single CSV that was provided. Although, to know which ones you want to work with, you probably want to just at least display them all. But yeah, just like this, you can already get started with, exploring and navigating your data. Any questions before I get into some of like my pointers and tips and things to keep in mind?
Yeah, how much scrap work would you like to see? Because I'm pretty messy when it comes to like figuring things out and
yeah, great
okay.
question. That's one of the things I actually was just gonna talk about as well.
Okay, sorry.
So, here we have, what is it? I think it's 11 different folders, 11 different files. I think most students don't use all of them. Most students use maybe like 5 or 6, but there's going to be code of you opening all 11 at some point, probably, right? I personally, and this really depends on your workflow, I personally have one super, super messy notebook that I start off with, and I have all of my scratch work. And then what I do towards the end of a project is I actually sort of I actually make a new notebook and I like redo everything nicely and basically copy and paste the code that I want to use over. That's just my own workflow, because when you're presenting your code to me, I don't need to see where you have, basically, I don't need to see the code that you're not utilizing for your final analysis. Unless it is part of like some sort of decision making, like let's say you really get into the weeds of this one data folder to only decide, oh, I'm not going to use this. And if that is very relevant to, your actionable insights, then keep that in. But for the most part, the notebook that we walk through during the review is going to be fair. It should be fairly clean. I will say for most students, it's not always super clean. That's fine, especially for the first project. I think as you get used to working on these sorts of projects, you'll get a better sense of what to keep, what not to keep for the review. Also at this point, very important to know that the person that will be looking at your code is me, and I'm not Microsoft. So if you're unsure about anything, just leave it in. I am more than happy to this is a learning experience for you all. So if you're unsure about something, either Slack me and ask. You can leave everything in if you'd like. And I will give you that feedback on whether I think you should keep this, omit this, so on and so forth.
Would you like us to kind of leave little comments like, hey, I wasn't sure whether to delete this or something in the book, so I kept it in just in case?
Yes, that is another one of the points I was going to make. In your notebook, you see here, these are code cells that we're coding in, right? So you're definitely going to have like a lot more code cells in this. So let's say I'm exploring all of my data frames first. Very, very important to make use of your Markdown cells. Markdown cells are what you're going to use to really make your notebook easy to follow. Of course, I don't expect everyone to be like perfectly organized with this first project, but try. So in terms of how to create Markdown cells and working with Markdown cells, you can, when you're highlighting over a cell, you can click Markdown, and this will be a Markdown cell where whatever I type in will just come out as text. Some very, very basic formatting. If you want like a header, you put like $1 at the start of it. And then if you want it to be like a subheader, you can do $2. I think you can go up to like 6 layers of headers, so you can do that. So use this to, section out your notebook. Section out your notebook. And also, I do think it is highly, highly beneficial to lay out your thought processes as much as you can. I know it is a lot, especially when you're on a roll with, coding and cleaning in pandas, that, to then switch back to like, okay, let me document my thought processes. I understand that is not easy. I'm also not very, very good at that and like keeping up with that, but try to do that as much as possible. The more that you have here, and the less that I have to ask you, so what were you thinking when you were doing this here, the better. You really want to maximize clarity. It's going to be very, very beneficial for when you go for job interviews in the future. And sometimes people will look at your code and you're not around to explain what you're doing. Having as much explanation as you can is going to be, I think the more explanation, the better. Of course, you don't want to have like pages of like essay text of like every single thought that you've had, but at least explain what it is you're doing. So if I'm like going from this to maybe I decide to, maybe the first thing I want to do here is, I don't know, maybe I want to clean out these dollar signs. So as a preview, I know that these are all strings and this is something that you all will have to clean. These are strings and I want them as numbers, for example. It's a really good idea to either maybe as a markdown cell, stripping accents from dollar values as an example. Maybe you can even do, I don't know, maybe you can even do oh, by the way, the shortcut to turn it into markdown is the letter M. Maybe I do like data cleaning. And then maybe I do something like, let's see, maybe cleaning numerical values. And then maybe first I do, okay, maybe out of numerical values I have, first I'm going to do budget. And then I clean my budget here. As long as it's clear in like here you see I don't have too many words, but it's clear what I'm working on. Or you can also choose to do it in like comments. So like you can choose to do like cleaning up commas and dollar signs, or you can even do like signs in budget. You can do that code there. As long as it's clear, don't have to worry about writing like full sentences. Grammar is not the most important thing here either. You just need people to know what it is that you're trying to do.
I have a question. With the data sets, are we just using one specific data set, or I know you said we can go through multiple data sets, but ultimately we're using one specific data set?
So it depends on what you mean by data set. So there's like 11 files here. Right. I would say try to use at least 3. Because for example, in this one that we see here, all we have is like, the only thing that we have here is like the budget and the gross numbers, which sure, you can get a lot of information about that, right? We can see that, oh, maybe, Avatar made the most amount of money. How you want to turn that into an actionable insight, you can probably come up with something from here. Maybe you want to like look at the date and figure out, okay, what month something was released versus, how much money it made. But you will get more information. You will get more, what's the word? You'll basically have more to look at when you bring in other data sets. So for example, let's see, I think there is one that has like a bunch of genres, which is pretty interesting. So let's look at this one real quick. So here, oh, zip data. Zip data. Cool. So this has a bunch of genre information. It has popularity score that you might use as well. It has a vote, some sort of vote average. And this is a quick preview of something that y'all will have to clean. But yeah, bringing in this data frame will allow me to also look at, how people like a movie, which that other data set didn't have. So, incorporating more data will allow you to, maybe have richer insights.
So using multiple data frames, we can use it as a comparative analysis.
Yeah. I think, at this point, I guess if you're just seeing this for the first time, it's very hard to like come up with something. I would recommend definitely check out some of the examples that I posted down here of like what kinds of questions people were asking themselves, or what kinds of insights they were trying to provide. Yeah, I will say, I guess I can segue into that for now. The way that students have found the easiest to work on a project like this is through questions. I mean, it's a very back and forth process of how do I formulate my question. And for example, here, let's just pull up one of the project examples to see. Let's see. Let's use one of the examples here. So this project was, this is actually from like, okay, I think this class was from like March 20, no, this was like November 2019. So this is a while ago. So it's slightly different. They actually used the API here. And one of their questions was, okay, they didn't label their graphs the best, but one of their questions was like, okay, or their main question was like, how do movies fare on specific holidays? And so that was one of the questions that they set out to answer. Of course, the way that they formulated this question was a very back and forth process. Okay, looking at the data, do I have data on the holidays? Therefore, I formulate this question. Maybe I need to tweak my data to fit the question. Maybe I tweak my question to fit the data. It's going to be very, very back and forth. This project is a very specific, they're specifically looking at holidays, which is, let's see if I can find a more broad example. Let's see. Okay, maybe this one. So this on there, they say, okay, what can you expect to spend on a good movie? That was something that can help Microsoft decide on like a budget, for example. So most students have found it helpful to frame their insights in the form of questions. And that's because as part of this project, my requirement for you all is try and answer 3 to 4 questions or come up with 3 to 4 actionable insights for Microsoft to create movies. It doesn't have to be complicated, definitely. I don't need you all to be like movie production geniuses and like come up with some brand newfangled way of producing movies. As long as it makes sense and is driven by the data, it can be very, very simple. It can literally be like, well, superhero movies make the most amount of money, make superhero movies. As long as you can get your data to tell that story, and as long as you can show through some sort of visualization or through some sort of data frame summary that makes sense, that's good enough for me. I don't need some very in-depth analysis of like, okay, you should film in this country and incorporate these actors. I don't need that much detail. I just like the main goal of this project is, are you able to go from, these tables of like these data points to actionable insights for a business? And of course, during like one-on-ones, during office hours, more than happy to answer questions about like, is this an okay question to ask? Is this a good approach? More than happy to like help you all through this process. All right, any other questions at this point? And while y'all do that, let me reshare the screen so it's not so distracting. And I will scroll through to see if I need to mention anything else.
I have a question. I saw that we also have to like prepare like, and I saw it in the example you showed, like a PowerPoint presentation. Is that?
That's right.
All right.
So for the project office hours, actually, let me pull up our homeroom. So I haven't updated the calendar events yet, but so Tuesday, we're going to be talking about topic 8. I think on this one, I'm going to talk about more like data cleaning tips and like, depending on where you all are at with the project, talking about maybe data cleaning, maybe if you're joining tables, what are some things to look out for? And then on these 2 office hours, one of these I'm going to be talking about putting together a presentation, things to keep in mind, what should a presentation look like? I actually already have here for the 25th. I have a presentation template that I'm going to walk through that day and a bunch of examples. And on top of that, something that you'll have to prepare is a Readme. And the Readme is the other thing that I'm going to talk about during the other office hour. And Readme is basically when you go onto your GitHub page, this stuff, this is a README. Basically on the GitHub for anyone who's coming across your project, for them to get like a quick summary, a non-technical summary of your project. And I'll walk through process of thinking about creating this part as well. So don't worry about this for now. Usually people work on the slides and the README towards the end of their project. So I'll be talking about that in 2 weeks. So yeah, for now, just focus on, I guess, cleaning the data first and foremost. Like back and forth between exploring your data, maybe cleaning the ones that you think you want to use. This project is fairly open-ended. You can pretty much do, yeah, as I said, you can make it as easy or hard as you want it to be. If you want to make it complicated for yourself and like incorporate all of the data, you can. I'm not going to stop you, but most students end up using about 3 to 6 of the tables. So I think, Amir, I saw you come off mute a little.
Quick question. Okay, so you have like 3 questions. How much of things like the exploratory, like scatter plots and like kind of histogram, like how would you equate that to like a question per se? Like, cause let's say you have a question like, oh, this is how much like revenue or whatever, right? But let's say you wanted to get to that point, like, do you want to see, how much do you want to see of like kind of like scatter plots and just comparisons to get to that question?
Yeah, good question. It depends. Sometimes sometimes it's straightforward. Like, I don't know, maybe in this example, our budget and revenue correlated.
Okay.
You just need one scatter plot to show.
Okay.
Here they were looking at different genres and how ratings were distributed. They had all of these graphs. So really dependent on the question, how much you need to show. Just however much you think is clear enough, will be good enough.
Also, if we use an outside data set, let's say it's not that many CSV files, and we don't really have to merge, but it has a lot of data points. And let's say I had like 2,000 data points, and it was like 14 columns. I'm not saying that that's what I have, but that's what I've been seeing. Is that sufficient enough? Or as long as we have like the number and like, I guess, the complexity that we can kind of do an analysis, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, the trade-off, I would say like it's one or the other. You either do a lot of data cleaning and merging and joining, or you figure out how to work with an API. It really, it's either or. I feel like if you're getting all your data from an API, you can do that.
Okay.
I will say that if you are just getting one single already made CSV, you will miss out on some of the requirements. So keep that in mind. That's something I forgot to mention as well. There is a rubric. So the rubric lives not here, but the rubric lives, I will send you all the rubric to the Slack channel when I find it. I forget where it is on Canvas, but there is a rubric, and I will let you know where it is. And part of that rubric includes some sort of data pre-processing, which includes either, your data cleaning here or getting data from API.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Well, very cool. I'm super excited to see what you all come up with for this project. Feel free to draw inspiration from the project examples that I linked on the guidelines doc. Any questions, if anything is unclear, and I know you might run into a lot of questions because this is your first project, feel free to throw it into the Slack channel or DM me directly. I'm more than happy to help you through this process. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, have a good rest of your week, everybody. I will talk to you all at your one-on-ones or next week.
Thank you so much.
You guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye. Bye.